Chapter 9. Zach went home that afternoon still reeling. He'd woken up this morning, a mostly single elementary school teacher. Yes, he had a woman he'd been seeing off and on, more off than on. They were basically backup friends with benefits. When neither was seeing anyone else, and needed to get their strange on, they ended up with each other rather than hanging around the one bar on this side of the lake picking up people looking for a one-night stand. At least this way they knew what they were getting into, and wouldn't wake up to find their houses robbed or car stolen. Both things had happened to locals a few years before, so Zach and Marcy had come to an agreement. He and Marcy had known each other for years, and while they were good friends, they didn't care about each other that way. That reminded him. He needed to let her know he was done. He pulled out his phone and typed out a message, but didn't hit send. It wasn't that he wasn't sure about what he was saying, more that he wasn't sure how to word it. He'd sent similar messages several times over the last few years, but somehow it didn't feel right. He erased the message and sent another instead. This one simply said, "Hey, need to talk. Want to meet for a beer?" He felt like this needed to be done in person. Zach pocketed his phone and went into the kitchen. He opened the fridge and stared inside, looking for something to make for dinner, but nothing caught his eye. Next was the freezer, and he stood there for several minutes staring at the inside before he gave up and closed it. Nothing sounded good right now. He was headed to the laundry room to check the deep freeze when his phone chirped. He pulled out his phone and pressed his thumb to the sensor, unlocking it. You'd never believe the things a group of 9-year-olds could think of to do with a phone they found unlocked. Just before opening the freezer, he looked down at the screen to see what the message was, and found Marcy had replied. "Sounds good, 7 at the Hideaway." "Great, see you then." Zach sent back, then checked his watch. It was 6:15. He only had about half an hour before he had to leave, unless he wanted to be late. So much for cooking. He closed the freezer and went back to the kitchen. A burger at the bar sounded as good as anything, and he wouldn't have to cook. That burger was sounding better and better. He glanced around the room again, poured a glass of water, and carried it into the bedroom with him while he grabbed a jacket. The temperature dropped fast once the sun went down, even in the summer. Zach stepped into the Hideaway on the lake, known to locals simply as the Hideaway, and looked around. It didn't take him more than a minute to spot Marcy seated at a table along the wall. He nodded at Gail behind the bar and headed for the table, knowing she would send him a drink. She knew what he wanted. "Hey, you look ready to fall asleep where you are," Zach said as he pulled out a chair and sat. "I'm not too far from it, but when you said you wanted to talk, I thought we should do it. What's up?" Marcy tipped up the bottle in her hand for a quick sip. "Just wanted to let you know, I'm gonna be tied up for a while." "And you couldn't text me that, why?" She narrowed her eyes. "Just didn't feel right. I wanted to show the respect of saying it, to your face." "This is because Dani's back, isn't it?" Zach looked down at the table and tried to figure out what to say. He couldn't tell her about Mark, at very least, not until he told his parents. "Do you really think you have a chance? After the way she dropped you last time?" How could he tell her that hadn't been Dani, without going into details she didn't need? Should he even try? "I don't know if I have a chance, and right now that doesn't matter. All that matters is for a while, at least, I won't be available. I wanted to tell you face to face. I value your friendship and don't want there to be a problem between us." Marcy sat back in her chair, hands held up in front of her. "No worries here. You gotta do you, whatever that takes. You know where I am when she drops you again." She drained the last bit from her bottle, set the empty down with a hollow thud, and stood. "I'll catch you later." Later. He watched her go, then got up and went to the counter. "Hey Gail, you pour that drink yet?" Not yet, you're next. Want something different? Nah, I want to cancel it. Something's come up. No problem. Catch you next time. Next time. Zach headed for the door, checking his watch as he stepped outside. He'd been inside less than 15 minutes, still plenty of time. 30 minutes after he left the bar, Zach pulled into his parents' driveway. He shut off the engine and sat for a moment, wondering if maybe he should wait before telling them. No. If they ran into Mark, they would know in a heartbeat. Not telling them would only make things worse. He'd learned long ago that it was always better to be open and upfront with his folks, even when he knew they wouldn't agree with what he was doing or had done. With a sigh, he opened his pickup door and got out. No use in putting it off any longer. He had no doubt they would be disappointed they'd missed so much, but they wouldn't take it out on him. He went to the door and knocked, but he didn't wait for an answer before letting himself in. "Where are you?" he called as he stepped through the door. "Back here," came his father's voice from the back of the house. Zach made his way through the house to the French doors off the dining room, which stood open to the back deck where his parents sat facing the lake. "What's up?" his mother asked as he stepped outside. "You're around late, what's up?" his father asked. Zach grabbed a chair and dragged it close, setting it to face them before he sat down. He was quiet for a couple minutes as he tried to figure out how to say what he knew had to be said. "You look like you've got something on your mind, son," his dad said. "I do." Zach bit his lip. "You both remember Dani, right? You two were barely apart for your sophomore and junior years before her family left. Of course we remember her," his mom said. "Is this about her?" His dad frowned. "It is." Zach took a deep breath. He could think of no way to ease into this. "I don't know if you've heard, but she's back." "I had heard," Mom said, "but I hope you're not going to start seeing her again. She hurt you so badly last time." "Let him finish, Kara," his dad said. "I'm not seeing her, at least not the way you think. I ran into her last week, we spoke. We were and went our own way, but then she called me this morning and asked me to meet. She wanted to talk." "Oh no. I hope you're not setting yourself up for another heartbreak." His mother shook her head. "Kara," his father reminded her to let him finish. Zach filled them in on how breaking things off with him wasn't Dani, but her father. Everything she told him today, up until the part about his son. "Do you believe her?" his dad asked. "Why is she just coming forward with this now? Why not before?" his mom wanted to know. "Her dad passed away last year. I don't have all the details, but apparently he never told anyone until just before he died, and then only her mother. Her mom told her yesterday after she said she'd run into me. 10 years is a long time. Neither of you is the same person you were then. Is she wanting to start seeing you again? Is that why she called?" Kara asked. "No, Mom. It's more than that. It wasn't just me her father lied to, it was her too. I told you that. She had tried to tell me something that he intercepted. Something that would have changed our whole lives." His parents frowned, but they both remained silent while they waited for him to continue. A lump stuck in his throat, and he cleared his throat. "Dani was pregnant when they left," Zach said the words and let them fall where they would. The silence seemed to last an eternity, but it was probably no more than 10 or 15 seconds. "Can I assume she told you because she kept the baby?" his father said after a moment. "She did. She thought I knew and had abandoned her." Zach closed his eyes as a band of hurt tightened around his heart. He hated that she thought he would do that, but they had both been kids. She couldn't be blamed for trusting her father. "I have a son. I met him today." "A son?" Kara gasped. I have a grandson? You do. He doesn't know who I am just yet, but we'll tell him soon, then you'll get to meet him. Are you sure he's yours? His father asked, eyes narrowed. Zach met his father's gaze. There's not a doubt in my mind. And when you see him, you'll know too. What's his name? His mom wanted to know. Zach's attention was still on his dad. That picture of me on the mantle at the top of the slide? Yeah. If it had green eyes, it could be him, Zach said. His dad closed his eyes and nodded. All right. His name? Kara said again. Zach glanced at his mom, then back to his dad before answering. He wanted to see the reaction when he found out. My son's name is Mark Allen Went. The elder Mark looked up and met Zach's gaze, eyes wide. Really? Yes, really. Dani named him after you. Well, her dad too, but you got his first name. But why? His dad seemed to be at a loss for words. Zach thought this might be the first time he'd ever seen that. Why would she do that if she thought you had abandoned her? You'll have to ask her that yourself. When do we get to meet him? His mom sounded impatient and excited. I'm not sure yet, but soon. Dani says he's been through a lot lately, losing his grandfather last year and moving up here, away from all his friends. She doesn't want to drop too much on him at once. That's a good idea, his mom said, nodding. I'm going to spend some time with them, get to know him before we tell him who I am. Once that's done, I'm hoping to bring him to meet you. Dani said he'll be excited to have more grandparents because her mom spoils him. Zach looked from his mom to his dad and back. I expect the two of you won't be much different. Probably not. I've been waiting patiently for a little one. He's not so little, but why should that stop me? His mom said, rubbing her hands together. Zach had no doubt she was thinking of the things she wanted to do with, and for, his son. If he's yours or you just want him to be yours, then he's ours. I'd like to meet him whenever you and his mother are ready for that. Thanks, Dad. Zach took a deep breath. I wasn't planning on coming out here or telling you tonight, but then it occurred to me, what if you saw him? What if you figured it out before I told you? He shook his head. I couldn't let that happen. Not if I could prevent it. So you came to tell us. So I came. You could have called, the older Mark said. I could have, but this isn't phone call news. This is in-person, face-to-face news. His dad was silent for a moment, then spoke. Every once in a while, you surprise me with your insight. I know you're grown and on your own, and I remember that most of the time. But every once in a while, you surprise me by acting more mature than I expect. I'm proud of you. Happiness rushed through Zach. He hated having missed so much of his son's life, but that would change now. On top of that, his dad, who wasn't the most expressive person, was proud of him. It hadn't been the easiest day, but today was one of the best days of his life.